Eek.
They say, you never truly know a person until you see how they treat you when you've given them your everything. I spent 4 months planning the perfect night. I spent 3 years building a life. And in one single morning,
Friend.
it all turned to dust the moment she walked through that door. Am not a man who screams, a man who calculates, and the math on my life just changed forever. Am a civil engineer.
Beamsen.
I spend my life dealing with structural integrity and load-bearing capacities. I know exactly how much weight a beam can hold before it snaps. Brittany was my beam, or so I thought. We'd been together for 3 years.
Eat.
It wasn't just a relationship, it was a commitment. I had been saving every spare dollar for a custom ring. I didn't go out with the guys. I didn't buy that motorcycle it'd been eyeing.
Fand.
I ate sandwiches at my desk while everyone else went out for lunch. Every single cent went toward that tiny velvet box hidden in the back of my closet. Our anniversary was supposed to be the night.
Easen.
I had called the restaurant, Le Bernardin, back in February. You don't just walk into a place like that on a Saturday night. I had the reservation for 8 p.m. I bought a fresh bottle of Chateau Lynch-Bages 2010.
Finksting.
It was the wine she loved from that trip we took upstate. I remembered every detail, but when Saturday arrived, the chair across from me remained empty. I sat there at the table. The candles remained unlit.
The wine stayed corked.
I waited until midnight, then 2 a.m. suzzle, then 4 a.m. I didn't sleep. I didn't even turn on the TV. I just stared at the front door, listening to the silence of our home. Around 8
Finjiji.
the lock clicked. Brittany walked in, looking like she'd been through a hurricane of bad decisions. Her hair was a mess. Her makeup was smeared.
Thinkdom.
She had that look, the one that screams. I spent the night seeking comfort from someone who never deserved me. She dropped her keys on the console. The sound of metal hitting wood was deafening in the silence.
You didn't look at me at first.
She just sighed, rubbing her temples, already preparing her narrative. God, what a night, she muttered, kicking off her boots. He really needed me, Jake.
Understand if you actually trusted me.
I didn't jump up. I didn't rush to get her water or ask what happened. I just sat there, my heart turning cold. She walked toward the kitchen.
Expecting me to play the role played.
For 3 years, the supportive, unquestioning boyfriend. But as she passed the dining table, she stopped. She saw the candles. She saw the wine. She saw the empty.
Perfect placing settings.
She saw the reality of the night she had abandoned. Jake, please, she said, her voice dripping with annoyance. Don't do this. Don't start with the guilt trip. I finally looked up at her.
Start what, Brittany?
My voice was dead calm. I'm not starting anything. Just finishing it. She scoffed, crossing her arms. You're being dramatic. My ex was in a bad place. He had a breakdown.
You can just leave him alone.
I stood up slowly. I didn't shout. I didn't throw anything. I walked to the bedroom and pulled the suitcase out from under the bed. I started throwing my clothes into it.
What are you doing?
She asked, her voice losing its edge, replaced by a sudden sharp fear. I'm doing the math, I replied. You say he needed you, but I spent 4 months planning a future.
One night,
Choosing a ghost from your past. Jake, stop! She cried, lunging for my arm. It's just one night. It didn't mean anything. I looked at her, and for the first time I saw exactly what she was.
vacuum.
It wasn't just a night, Brittany. It was a choice. She grabbed my hand, trying to stop me from zipping the bag. I love you. We have plans we were going to talk about. She stopped.
Fushi.
She saw my hand go into my jacket pocket. I pulled out the small velvet box I had been hiding for 6 months. I didn't open it. I just placed it on the dresser, right in front of her. I spent 6 months skipping lunches
Be working overtime.
and dreaming of the moment I'd give this to you, I said softly. I bought this for the girl who prioritized us. I opened the box. The diamond caught the morning light, beautiful and cold.
But that girl didn't show up last night.
Her face went pale. The realization hit her like a physical blow. She reached for it, her eyes wide. Jake, no. I snapped the box shut. You lost the right to this the moment you walked through that door smelling like his cologne. I walked past her. I didn't look back. I didn't slam the door, because that would imply I was still angry. I was done.
Bing.
As I stepped out into the crisp morning air, I felt a weight vanish from my chest. She stood in the doorway, staring at the empty house, the unlit candles, and the ring she would never wear. She had her drama.
For the first time in years, I had my life back. Justice isn't a courtroom.
Justice is walking away from the structural failure before the roof collapses on you. And trust me, the foundation feels solid again.
Feel.
If you've ever had to walk away from someone who didn't appreciate the sacrifice you made, you know exactly how this feels. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is simply leave. Did I do the right thing?
Let me know in the comments.
Dot. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories about life, love, and the moments that change us forever. See you in the next one. The annoyance in her voice is a physical weight.
Thick and suffocating.
It's the tone of someone who has already decided. I am the problem. Don't do this, she snaps. Don't start with the guilt trip right now. I turn around slowly, keeping my voice steady.
Thing.
Almost clinical in its precision.
Start what?
Exactly. I didn't yell. I just let the question hang in the air between us like a thin wire. You're doing that silent treatment thing, she says, her eyes darting around.
Fast, the passive-aggressive, sitting in the dark thing.
Tyler was in a really bad place last night.
Okay.
He was spiraling hard. I mean, really hard. He called me around 9, completely panicking. If I hadn't gone over there,
Bing.
I honestly don't know what he would have done to himself. I had to go, Jake. I look at her, really look at her, and see the ghost of the man who has haunted our relationship for 3 years.
Tyler Madison.
Her ex.
Perpetual disaster she dated for 2 turbulent years before we met.
He was a DJ on the verge of making it big at 24, and somehow, miraculously, he was still on the verge at 29.
5 years of being on the verge of greatness.
Must be quite the edge to live on. For 3 solid years, I had been the steady hand in Brittany's life.
Fade.
I was the civil engineer who paid 70% of the bills while she chased a social media career that barely covered her own coffee budget. I planned the trips, managed the rent,
Fixed every leaking faucet and sticking door.
I learned plumbing from YouTube, just so I wouldn't have to hear the sound of someone else's incompetence. Tyler was the opposite. He was the chaotic creative who only called when he was broke, lonely, or having one of his routine existential crises. It happened like clockwork every 3 weeks. And every single time,
Fiji.
Brittany dropped everything to play nursemaid to his ego. I put up with it because I trusted her. I believed her when she said that chapter was closed. I believed her because when you love someone,
Believe the best version of their stories.
it was our 3rd anniversary. Brittany, I say softly. I let the words land. She rolls her eyes, a gesture so dismissive, it feels like a slap. I know, she sighs.
Feel absolutely terrible about missing dinner.
I really do. But this was life or death. Jake, he was talking about ending everything. Suicide.
Fanged what kind?
Of person would I be if I ignored that because of some restaurant reservation? What kind of monster ignores someone in that state? The manipulation is so textbook, it almost makes me want to laugh.
She is painting me as the villain.
For expecting a commitment. She is turning my resentment of her absence into a character flaw.
She doesn't know.
I have a ring in my pocket that cost me 6 months of overtime and careful planning. So, he was actively, imminently suicidal, I ask. My voice remains calm. Engineers are good at that.
Staying calm while the foundation is cracking.
Yes, she nods. So her expression tight. He was hysterical, crying, struggling to breathe, the whole thing.
Did you call emergency services?
I ask.
Question lands like a piece of falling iron.
She freezes. Just for a second, but it's enough. What? She stammers. If he was a legitimate threat to his own life, the only logical response is to call the professionals.
Crisis teams.
People trained to save lives. Did you call them? Did you call anyone actually qualified to handle a mental health crisis? Her face shifts. The annoyance is cracking.
Fish. And guilt is leaking through the fissures.
No, Jake, I didn't call the police on him. That's not it. He just needed someone there to talk to. He needed to not feel alone. Right, I say, my voice dropping an octave. You decided that you, and only you, were the savior of his life. Not a professional, not a hotline, not his own family, just you. You're twisting this, she snaps, stepping toward me.
Stand up from the couch and move toward her.
As I get closer, the scent hits me. It's detailed. It's a story told in molecules. It isn't the sterile smell of a hospital or a clinic. It's the stale,
Feet.
sweet smoke of those fruit-flavored disposable vapes Tyler is addicted to. It's the sour, yeasty funk of spilled cheap beer, and under it all, cutting through the air like a knife, is that aggressive, musky cologne he wears.
Fantal 33.
I know the smell, because Brittany used to come home from these visits reeking of it. You smell like a dive bar, I say. Not an accusation, just an observation. Her face flushes a deep, guilty red.
Font.
We had a drink after he calmed down, just to settle his nerves, she stammers. Then we fell asleep on the couch, watching a movie. Nothing happened. Jake,
Missed our anniversary dinner to get tipsy with your ex-boyfriend.
because he felt lonely. I repeat, my voice flat. He needed me. She screams, her voice cracking. God, you are so insecure about this.
Handle.
That I care about other people. If you actually trusted me instead of being jealous all the time, you'd understand that sentence right there. That is the moment the glass shatters.
If you actually trusted me, you'd understand.
I look at her, really look at her. I see the smeared eyeliner she clearly forgot to touch up after sleeping on his couch.
Fiji.
I see the defensive posture of a person who has never had to face a consequence in her life. She doesn't feel sorry. She feels entitled. She wants the stability of my life and the thrill of his chaos.
You and she wants me to pay for both.
I don't say another word. I turn around and walk toward the bedroom. Jake. Jake. Where are you going? Are you seriously walking away from me right now? She follows me, her voice rising in pitch. I reach the bedroom and start pulling my suitcase from the closet. I start filling it with everything I own. I don't look back. I don't need to. The realization is cold and absolute.
You.
I am not losing a partner. I am regaining my life, and as I zip the bag shut, I know one thing for certain. The anniversary dinner I missed is going to be the best meal I've ever had. Because for the first time in years,
You.
I'll be eating it alone, in peace. The silence in the room was heavier than the antique furniture I had spent months refinishing. I turned my back on her without a word.
Use you.
My footsteps, rhythmic and hollow, against the hardwood floor. Jake, stop right there. Are you seriously turning your back on me after everything we've been through? Her voice climbed an octave, sharp and piercing,
Finge.
echoing against the walls that were supposed to be our sanctuary. I ignored the tremor in her tone and reached for my travel bag, heaving it onto the edge of the bed. I pulled the zipper,
Feel.
the harsh metallic sound cutting through the stale air. Oh my God, you have got to be kidding me. She let out a dry, incredulous laugh that made my skin crawl. You're actually packing a suitcase because I helped a friend.
Being beyond dramatic, Jake.
I walked past her to the dresser, my movements robotic, pulling shirts from the drawer with a cold precision. Jake, please, stop acting like this and talk to me like an adult.
You.
I shoved my hand into the back of the sock drawer, pushing aside the heavy winter woolens. My fingers brushed against the cool velvet of the navy blue box I had hidden there months ago. Inside that box sat a platinum band,
Bend.
holding a 1.5-carat diamond. I had spent 6 months of overtime pay to afford. I had driven 2 hours to a specific jeweler just to find the exact cut she once pointed out in a window display.
Fanged.
I had planned to propose over a bottle of Chateau Lynchbages the night before, a moment meant to change everything. I turned around, the box heavy and cold in my palm. Brittany was standing in the doorway, her hands firmly on her hips, her face a mask of practiced indignation. She opened her mouth to deliver another lecture on my perceived trust issues, but the words died instantly. Her gaze locked onto my hand.
Pitched in a sharp, jagged intake.
The arrogance that usually defined her expression shattered, replaced by a gray, hollow realization. Her arms went limp at her sides,
Finged.
and the light in her eyes seemed to extinguish. Jake, she whispered, the syllable barely audible, scraping against her throat. Is that? Were you actually going to? I didn't offer a reply,
Thinged.
and I certainly didn't open the lid to let her see the light dance off the stone she had just forfeited. She hadn't earned the right to see the dream she had dismantled. I slipped the box deep into my pocket
Turned back to the bed.
and packed my essentials with a finality that felt like cutting an anchor. I zipped the bag shut with a sharp, definitive tug. No, 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 this isn't happening, she stammered, stumbling into the room,
Thing.
her hands reaching out to grab at my sleeves. Jake, wait, you were going to propose last night. I sidestepped her reach, the weight of the suitcase pulling at my shoulder, grounding me. Jake, please, stop.
Beauty. Let's just sit down and talk about this.
She moved to block the bedroom exit, tears pooling in her eyes reels, stinging tears of loss rather than the usual manipulative droplets. If I had known that was the plan,
Fiancine. I never would have picked up the phone. I would have told Tyler to go to hell.
I swear I would have put the phone away. I paused for one heartbeat, forcing myself to look directly into her eyes, stripping away the distance.
Exactly the problem.
Brittany, I said, my voice dangerously steady. You shouldn't have needed a diamond ring to know that you were the person I wanted to build a life with. I pushed past her.
Suitcase wheels clicking against the door frame.
She tried to snag the handle, her nails scraping uselessly against the synthetic fabric, but I pulled it free. I walked down the hallway, frantic footsteps echoing behind me like a ghost I was finally laying to rest. You can't just walk out. We share this life, Jake. I love you. I reached the front door and pulled it open,
Busey.
the cool evening air hitting my face like a baptism. Jake, she shrieked, a raw, guttural sound that must have rippled through the entire apartment complex. I stepped out, closing the door gently behind me.
Fume the lock.
Click into place a final, permanent sound. I walked down the stairs, climbed into my car, and drove into the night without turning on the radio. For the first time in years, the crushing weight in my chest was gone, replaced by a fragile, terrifying, beautiful silence. The next 2 days were a masterclass in the digital siege she launched against my sanity. I had checked into a bland,
Frange Hotel 20 minutes away.
a place defined by beige walls and generic, uninspired artwork. It wasn't luxury, but it was quiet, and most importantly, it was mine alone. I sat on the stiff mattress,
Use you.
watching my phone vibrate against the nightstand like a trapped insect. The screen illuminated the dark room repeatedly. Brittany. 12 missed calls by Sunday morning, 14 texts by noon,
3.
voicemails. I'd deleted without listening. The messages followed the predictable hollow trajectory of a narcissist, realizing their safety net had been shredded. Phase 1 was the frantic denial and the desperate bargaining that lasted until Sunday afternoon. Baby, please, just pick up. I can't breathe in this room. You're terrifying me. Am dumping all of Tyler's stuff as we speak.
He'll send you photos. So you can see it's gone.
Just come home. We can fix this. We can get through anything together. Couples have rough patches all the time. Phase 2 arrived with the sunset. On Sunday, the anger, the vitriol.
Shifting of blame.
You are being so incredibly immature, just walking out on me after I stood by you during your job stress. That is actual cowardice, Jake, and it proves you never really loved me.
Fumes up, Reddit.
I bet you've been looking for an excuse to leave for months. You calculated liar. The irony of her claiming to support me through job stress wasn't lost on me.
He had spent months complaining
That I wasn't giving her enough attention while I worked to afford our life. Phase 3 brought the flying monkeysure, chosen emissaries of guilt. Her best friend, Madison, called first.
Fiesel.
A woman whose history of infidelity was only matched by her audacity in calling herself a relationship coach. I answered, needing to know if Brittany was about to set the curtains on fire. Jake,
You need to stop this cruel performance immediately.
Madison screeched, her voice sharp enough to draw blood. She is on the floor, literally sobbing.
That dangling an engagement ring and then ghosting someone is a form of abuse.
I sat by the window, watching the interstate traffic flow in silence, thinking about how justice finally tasted like peace.
Oh,
The phone pressed against my ear felt like a cold, heavy stone. Madison was shrieking on the other end, her voice a sharp, jagged blade cutting through the silence of my hotel room.
that's a form of psychological abuse, Jake.
That's what you're doing! You're abusing her! I sat in the uncomfortable armchair by the window, watching the interstate traffic crawl by like a slow, bleeding vein.
Perfect.
I felt a strange chilling detachment from the world outside. It was as if I were floating, watching my own life unfold from a ceiling corner, observing a stranger. I didn't dangle anything, Madison, I said.
You.
My voice was steady, startlingly robotic, lacking even a tremor of the pain that had hollowed me out. I packed my things. The ring belongs to me. Just like the rent money she's going to desperately need next month when she realizes I'm them not coming back. You are heartless, Madison screamed. She made one mistake, Jake. One.
Fixed.
She was just trying to be a good to someone who was suffering. You're punishing her like Shez is a criminal. I closed my eyes for a brief second, the image of Brittany, walking in at 8 a.m. flashing behind my lids. Madison, I interrupted, my tone icy. Let me paint you a picture. She arrived home at 8 in the morning, smelling like his cologne and cheap, stale beer. She missed a dinner reservation I had booked 4 months in advance.
Feud.
She chose to spend our anniversary getting tipsy with her ex-boyfriend instead of celebrating with me.
She didn't save a life, Madison.
She went on a date.
Thinks him.
Tell Brittany she has until the end of the month to figure out the lease situation.
Stop.
I'll pay my half of the rent through the end of this month, just as the contract requires.
Stop.
After that, she is entirely on her own.
Jake. Can't just.
I didn't let her finish. I hung up, staring at the screen for a moment before I blocked Madison's number with a single, decisive swipe. Then, I moved down the list. Blocked Brittany's sister, Rachel.
For work friend. Sasha.
I muted the group chat that had been our digital living room for years. I felt like an engineer, clearing a site for demolition. Methodically, I severed every artery she had to reach me.
Felt like reclaiming a piece of my soul I hadn't realized was lost.
Monday morning arrived with a cold gray light. I walked into the office as if nothing in my universe had collapsed. I showered at the hotel,
Feeds.
put on a crisp, clean shirt, and parked my car in the same spot I'd used for 3 years. My coworker, Ben, greeted me with a yawn as I grabbed coffee from the break room. Have a good weekend, Jake. It was fine, I replied.
I didn't offer more. And he didn't press.
That is the beauty of working with engineers. We focus on structural integrity, not emotional architecture. We talk about load calculations and project deadlines.
Fees. Not the wreckage of our personal lives.
I threw myself into the work, burying my grief under layers of spreadsheets and structural load analyses. I reviewed building codes until the words blurred.
Finged.
I double-checked the calculations for a bridge reinforcement project we were bidding on. It was meditative, almost spiritual. When you have been gutted by betrayal, there is something incredibly soothing about math.
Fuel. Math is honest.
Math doesn't lie to your face while keeping a secret stash of memories with someone else. Math doesn't gaslight you. 2 plus 2 will never call its ex at midnight because it feels lost or confused.
Thing.
The numbers balanced. The equations were absolute. There was no gray area, no needing to read between the lines, no wondering if a good night text actually meant him staying with him.
You. I worked through lunch. Every single day that
That week, I stayed late. Not because I was avoiding the hotel, but because I finally had peace. My manager even remarked on my efficiency, my newfound focus.
found.
I've just found some clarity on my priorities, I told him, not bothering to explain that my priority had shifted from us to me. By Wednesday, the silence from my end the total. Radio silent, void seemed to break something in Brittany. The angry texts ceased entirely. They were replaced by something far more pathetic, the phase of desperation and performative self-pity. I miss you so much I can't sleep. The apartment feels so empty without you.
Everything reminds me of us.
I found your gray hoodie in the closet. It still smells like your cologne. I've been sleeping in it every night. I can't eat, Jake. I called in sick to work today.
We don't know how to do this without you.
I read every single one of them. I didn't respond to a single message. I let them pile up like evidence in a high-stakes court case. Each text was proof that she finally grasped the gravity of what she had thrown into the fire. But the memory of her face, when she saw that empty ring, boxed the look of pure, horrified realization was permanently etched into my mind.
Yule. That was my closure.
That was the only justice I needed. Anything I said would only dilute the purity of her understanding. 3 weeks passed before I returned to the apartment to collect the remainder of my belongings.
Timed it for a Tuesday morning.
I timed it for a Tuesday morning, knowing she would be trapped in a marathon team meeting. The place was a disaster. It looked like a dorm room after a catastrophic party.
Takeout containers
Were scattered across the coffee table like ruins. A mountain of dirty, wrinkled laundry dominated the sofa. It was her internal chaos, manifest in the physical world. I packed my books, my espresso machine,
efficient.
and the last of my clothes with quiet efficiency. As I was loading the final box into my trunk, our neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, shuffled by with her pug. She was the neighborhood's unofficial surveillance system.
He looked concerned.
"Jake," she called out, waving a gnarled hand. "I haven't seen you around. Is everything all right?" Brittany has had quite a bit of company lately. I paused, looking at the door that used to lead to our home. I moved out Mrs. Patterson. We broke up. She leaned in, her eyes wide with gossipy intrigue.
Oh, I see.
Well,
Young man.
with the loud muffler has been parking in your spot every night. He plays music at all hours. I was going to complain to the building manager, but I didn't want to cause any trouble. Of course, it was Tyler.
Thing.
It hadn't even been a month, and the parasite had already migrated to the new host. A wave of nausea washed over me, followed instantly by a cold, sharp sense of relief. "Feel free to complain, Mrs. Patterson," I said, a faint,
Fig.
genuine smile touching my lips. Off the lease as of the 1st. That is not my spot anymore. As I pulled away from the curb, I felt the weight of the last few years lifting. Over the next few months,
To me through the grapevine.
information has a way of finding its way to you, even when you try to lock the doors. Brittany thought she was trading up,
Thing.
but she had merely invited her own ruin into the home I had paid for. The exciting nights with Tyler turned into constant fights,
Fiji.
and the money I was no longer providing forced her to face the reality of the bills she had ignored. I stopped checking the messages. I stopped asking about her. I was no longer the engineer of her life, and I was finally.
Truly. Back in control of my own.
They say that karma doesn't have a calendar, but for Brittany, it seemed to have a stopwatch set to exactly 4 months. I used to think my world had ended the day I packed my bags,
Figit.
leaving behind the apartment that felt more like a prison than a home. Little did I know, the real show was just beginning, and I had the best seat in the house, one where I didn't have to pay for the tickets. My name is then.
For years.
I was the stabilizer in a relationship that felt like trying to hold back a tidal wave with a screen door. Then there was Brittany,
Finction.
a woman who lived for the thrill of the chase but panicked the moment she caught what she wanted. And finally, Tyler the struggling artist, the man who saw my life as a buffet and my girlfriend as his personal catering service.
True, when I walked out.
I didn't just leave a relationship. I left a void that Brittany was desperate to fill with the exact kind of chaos she claimed to hate. She invited Tyler into our space, thinking that by removing my stability,
His potential would finally shine.
she became the financier of his delusions, handing over rent money, while he treated our living room like a frat house, turning my clean
Sanctuary.
into a graveyard of empty bottles and broken promises. The tension peaked when Brittany finally realized that Tyler wanted a project to be completed. He was a parasite that had finished feeding. He tried to hold him accountable, and his response was a script I had memorized by heart. "You're suffocating my creativity. You're just like my mother." And the classic, "I need space."
You.
The irony was thicker than the smog in the city. And honestly, watching her beg for the same respect I had given her for years was almost poetic.
You read it?
I was sitting at a restaurant with my friend Chris when he slid his phone across the table, his face a mix of pity and dark amusement.
Fingst.
Brittany had posted a black background story the universal signal for a catastrophic ego, collapse elementing how. She had thrown away the best thing for someone who saw her as an option. I expected to feel pain.
Feck.
But when Chris told me the truth that Tyler had cheated on her with a 19-year-old in the very bed, I used to sleep in the air, and my lungs turned into laughter. It was a sharp, jagged sound that cut through the room.
Purely because the universe had finally balanced the scales.
Dot! Chris asked if I was seeing anyone, and my mind immediately went to Nicole. Nicole, the pediatric nurse who communicated with words instead of games,
Think.
and who treated a relationship like a partnership rather than a hostage negotiation. I told Chris to deliver a message to Brittany. Tell her I'm doing better than I have been in years.
Indeed.
I didn't need the ring I'd bought for a future that wasn't meant to be, so I sold it. And you know what I bought instead? A vintage Ducati 996A motorcycle Brittany had forbidden me from ever owning because it was too dangerous.
Vesa.
Driving that bike up the coast last weekend with the wind hitting my face, I realized something profound.
Feason.
It wasn't the motorcycle that was dangerous. It was the woman who tried to keep me parked in a garage while she kept the engine of my life stalled. 6 months have passed since the dust settled.
Feud.
And every day is a reminder that the dead weight you drop today becomes the fuel for your freedom tomorrow. I'm not looking back, not because I'm bitter, but because the view in front of me is finally worth the ride.
Faked. The justice wasn't in seeing her fall.
The justice was in realizing I had already soared, long before she even noticed I was gone. The silence in the furniture store was heavy, almost suffocating. I looked at Brittany, really looked at her, and saw a shell of the woman who once dictated every corner of my life. The air around us felt cold, sterilized by the high-end lighting of Jensen Burke. She was standing there,
You.
shivering slightly in that oversized, stained hoodie. It was a stark contrast to the woman who used to demand Chateau Lynch badges on a Tuesday night. I just need to talk, she whispered,
Boot.
her eyes searching mine for any flicker of the man she used to manipulate. There is nothing left to say, Brittany, I replied, my voice steady, devoid of the jagged edges of old arguments. I turned back to the leather sofa,
You.
testing the cushions as if her presence was just an annoying background noise I could tune out. Jake, please. She stepped closer, her hand reaching out as if to touch my arm, but stopping inches away. Everything has changed,
Things.
she muttered. I know it has, I said, finally meeting her eyes again. But not in the way you think. The twist came when she started to log a brittle, jagged sound that echoed through the empty store.
Think. You're so smart.
She hissed, the mask of the victim slipping away to reveal the cold. Calculating strategist I once lived with. You think that job, that bike, and that nurse you're sleeping with make you better than me?
You. I didn't blink.
I don't think I'm better than you, I said calmly. I just know I'm finally living for myself. She took a sharp breath, her face twisting into a mask of pure resentment. You're paying for everything, aren't you?
He challenged.
Her voice rising. I heard about the condo. I heard about the promotion. You were nothing when we met. Jake, I built you. I felt a ghost of a smile touch my lips. You didn't build me, Brittany, I corrected her.
Me.
Like an asset you were worried might lose value. She looked stunned, the silence stretching between us like a physical barrier. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. She looked down at it,
Run.
her expression shifting from rage to genuine raw desperation. I need your help, she whispered, the bravado collapsing instantly. The police are looking for the money, Jake. Tyler, the guy I left you for, he didn't just walk out.
He took everything.
That was the second shift. The realization hit me that she hadn't come here for an apology. She had come here because she was sinking.
He expected me to be the life raft.
She had punctured a dozen times over. You want me to bail you out? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I have nothing else, she sobbed, actual tears finally spilling over.
He lost the apartment.
I lost the car. Please, just talk to the lawyers. Tell them it was mine. I looked at her, and for a fleeting second, I felt a wave of pity. But then I remembered the long nights of anxiety.
The exhaustion.
I remembered the mental exhaustion. I remembered the way she had mocked my career, my friends, and my dignity for years. No, I said the word simple and final. I think you've got it all wrong, Brittany.
Prompt.
I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a small printed document. It was an envelope I had been carrying ever since the legal team for my company had contacted me about the discrepancies Tyler had caused.
Thing.
I didn't block you because I was angry, I said. Handing her the paper, I blocked you because I was building a case. Her eyes scanned the paper and her face went pale,
Fusing spat.
a ghostly white that looked terrifying under the store lights. This is evidence of the embezzlement, she stammered, her voice shaking. I was the one who flagged your accounts, Brittany, I said.
Standing up and smoothing my jacket.
You thought I was busy working late on projects. I was working on you. The third shift was the most satisfying. That her attempts to ruin me had only provided the blueprint for her own downfall. She stood frozen, the paper trembling in her hands. You set me up? She breathed, her voice filled with disbelief. No, I said.
Finked, walking toward the
Exit without looking back. I just stopped protecting you from the consequences of your own choices. I walked out of the store and into the cool evening air. I could hear her calling my name.
sounded like a fading radio signal.
I reached the parking lot, and there it was, me Ducati. I swung my leg over, feeling the cold metal beneath me. The engine roaring to life with a sound of pure, unadulterated freedom.
I didn't look back at the store.
I didn't think about the past. I just twisted the throttle and rode away into the night, leaving the ghost of who I used to be behind, finally and completely free. The wind hit my face, sharp and clean, wiping away the last of the drama. I was heading home to Nickel, to a life that was real, honest, and entirely mine.
X wasn't.
Just a concept. Anymore. It was the hum of the engine beneath me and the clear road ahead. I had finally reclaimed my own story. The scent hit me before she even spoke. It was a suffocating mix of stale,
Product dap, coffee, and the heavy.
lingering musk of someone who hadn't seen a shower in days. She stood there in the middle of the lobby, her posture radiating that jagged.
Inspiration that only sets in when a person has finally hit absolute rock bottom.
Jake, please, she whispered, her eyes redrimmed and hollow. Can we just talk? 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. I didn't blink.
Flinch.
Brittany, I blocked you, I said, my voice as flat and cool as a winter morning. I know, she choked out, taking an agonizing step into my personal space, and I know you blocked me for a reason. I deserved it.
Every second of it.
She looked like a ghost of the person I once thought I knew. Back when our Sundays were filled with expensive wine and talk of a future that felt like a permanent sanctuary. I messed up, Jake,
She continued.
her hands trembling as she reached out, hovering just an inch from my jacket. Tyler, he was a monster, a massive, catastrophic mistake. He drained my accounts, he lied to my face.
Asian.
He treated me like I was nothing more than an accessory he could discard. I glanced at my watch. It wasn't a power move. I genuinely had dinner reservations with Nicole at a bistro downtown in 45 minutes. Details, I interrupted, my tone indifferent. That stopped her cold. You heard? She asked, her voice cracking. I heard everything, I replied. The borrowed money, the infidelity with that girl half your age.
You stranded.
It's the oldest story in the book, Brittany, a classic tragedy written by someone who traded a diamond for a piece of glass. Tears, real and raw, began to carve tracks through her makeup.
Think about you every day.
She sobbed. Every time he treated me like trash, I remembered how safe I felt with you. You never made me question my worth. You never made me feel anxious or small. I miss my best friend.
People change, Jake. I've grown from this.
Not the same person who walked out that morning. We can start over. This was the pitch. Sure she had rehearsed this scene in the dark,
Thin.
lonely corners of Madison's couch for weeks. I watched her hand, still trembling in the air between us. I forced myself to remember that Tuesday morning, the smell of his cheap cologne clinging to her clothes.
Thick.
Her arrogance as she told me I was insecure and controlling, for daring to ask why she was coming home at 8 in the morning, smelling like another man. Brittany, I said, my voice steady enough to cut glass.
Thinked.
Do you remember the last thing you said to me before you left that day? She blinked, confused, trying to scramble through the wreckage of her memory. I I said a lot of things. I was defensive. I was wrong about it all.
You said,
One specific thing, I corrected her. You told me that if I actually trusted you, I wouldn't be asking those questions. You told me I would have understood. Recognition flickered in her eyes, followed by a pathetic,
Brit nod.
yes, exactly. And I was wrong to say that. I know it was manipulative. I'm sorry. You weren't wrong, though, I said, leaning in slightly. What? She breathed. You were right if I had trusted you that morning.
Fume.
I would have been an absolute fool. I would have been a blind man, walking off a cliff. I took a deliberate, slow step back, reclaiming my territory, but I made a different choice. I didn't trust you. I trusted myself,
Trusted my gut.
my instincts, and my own value. And because of that, I realized exactly what I had to do. Her face began to crumple, the mask of the changed woman dissolving into pure, unadulterated shock. I don't hate you,
Brittany.
I said, my voice devoid of any malice. Hate requires a level of emotional investment I no longer have. You made a choice that night. You chose the chaos. You chose the drama. I chose peace.
You.
And I am certainly not going to trade my serenity to patch up the holes in your life. She clutched her chest, her breath coming in ragged gasps. But the ring, Jake! You bought a ring! We were going to be a family.
Vant, just turn that off.
I didn't turn it off, I said, looking her dead in the eye. You killed it that morning, when you looked at me and chose him over everything we had built.
Just break my heart.
You cured me of the delusion. The ring became nothing more than a piece of expensive metal. I paused, letting the reality settle into the silence of the room. I sold it, actually, 2 months ago.
Thank
It helped with the down payment on my condo. So, in a strange way, you did help me build my future. Just not the one you thought you'd be standing in. She stood there, paralyzed, her mouth agape. She looked around the room, picked at the life she had forfeited for a man who didn't respect her existence. I have to go, I said, checking my watch one final time. Nicole is waiting. We're cooking dinner tonight. Nicole, she whispered.
from a name. Tasting like poison in her mouth.
My girlfriend, I said, relishing the weight of the words. We've been together for 3 months. We communicate like adults. We trust each other. It's a concept you should look into.
Men.
It's truly refreshing. I didn't wait for her to stammer out another excuse. I didn't wait for the inevitable breakdown. I simply turned around and walked toward the exit, the glass doors sliding open to let the fresh,
Cool air of the evening hit my face.
Jake, wait! She cried out, her voice thin and shattered against the hum of the city. I didn't look back. I didn't slow down. I just kept walking into a future that was finally, blissfully.
You, all mine.
I walked away without looking back. The silence behind me wasn't empty. It was the loudest sound I had ever heard. For years, I had been a ghost in my own life, trapped in a cycle of manipulation, gaslighting.
And carefully crafted lies.
But today, the cycle stopped. Today, I finally chose myself. Brittany's voice echoed against the sterile, polished walls of the furniture store. It was small, thin,
Finction.
and intentionally broke the kind of tone she had used to control me for 5 years. I didn't turn around. I didn't pause. I didn't give her the satisfaction of seeing my resolve crumble. I kept walking toward the exit, boots clicking rhythmically against the marble floor. Jake, please! You can't just leave me here, she cried out, her voice rising in desperation. I remembered how many times I had stayed,
You knew.
how many times I had apologized for things I didn't do just to keep the peace.
Not today.
I stepped out into the cool evening air. The Pacific Coast Highway stretched out before me, glimmering under the twilight.
Fig.
My Ducati was waiting at the curb, a symbol of the freedom I had been slowly reclaiming for months. I climbed on, the metal cool beneath my hands,
Faint.
and felt the weight of my past falling away with every second I put distance between myself and that store. I wasn't heading back to the house we shared.
Fusette.
I was heading to the condo I had bought in secret, one place that was truly entirely mine. Nicole was already there. She was waiting with fresh vegetables for the stir-fry we had planned, a symbol of a life that was honest.
Simple and kind.
My phone vibrated in my pocket. I ignored it, but it wouldn't stop. Finally, I pulled over and glanced at the screen. It wasn't Brittany. It was Madison, Brittany's best friend.
Forwarded.
The misunderstandings that had nearly cost me my job and my sanity. The text was short, cold, and calculated. You think you're smart, Jake.
Used.
Brittany already told everyone at the firm that you embezzled the funds. By the time you get home, the police will be waiting. I stared at the screen, my heart hammering against my ribs. She was trying to bury me.
But she had made one fatal error.
I started the engine, a dark, dangerous smile playing on my lips. They thought I was the same man they had spent years vacuuming of his confidence.
Thing they thought.
I was still the person who feared a scandal. They didn't know that for the past 6 months, I had been working with an auditor. I had kept every receipt, every email,
Thing fiend.
and every recording of their business meetings where they openly mocked the company. I hadn't been staying calm because I was weak. I had been staying calm because I was building a case. I rode straight to the precinct.
Thing. I didn't go home to hide.
I went to the front desk and laid my tablet down, turning it toward the officer on duty. I'm here to report a corporate fraud, I said, my voice steady, and I have the evidence to prove it's not me.
3 hours later.
The tables had turned completely. Brittany and Madison were being led out in cuffs, their faces twisted in a mixture of shock and pure, unadulterated rage. They saw me standing by the cruiser,
Fixes.
leaning against the hood, watching them with nothing but clarity. Brittany locked eyes with me, her mask slipping to reveal the manipulative person she had always been. You ruined everything, she shrieked. I looked at her,
Fend.
then back at the horizon. No, Brittany, I replied, my voice calm. I just stopped letting you destroy me. I walked away from the station as the sun began to rise. The weight was gone.
Air felt fresher than it ever had.
I headed back to my condo, knowing that Nicole would be there, waiting with a smile that wasn't designed to drain me but to lift me up.
Finally understood that peace.
Isn't something you wait for. It's something you fight for. And today, I had won the only war that actually mattered. Guys, we are so close to hitting that 100.
Subscriber milestone on this channel.
If you haven't subscribed yet, please consider doing so. It truly helps us continue to share these stories, and it makes this dream a reality. Thank you for being part of this journey.
Thank you for choosing to listen.
I'll see you in the next one.